Week 12 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I would start this week. First, Detroit Lions. So this Lion team, arguably the best team in all pro football, and their defense has really stepped it up over the last few weeks. But it's easy for the defense to go out there and make plays when this offense is putting up 35-plus points per game over the last month of the season. So the last few weeks for Detroit, Week 9 at Green Bay, 14 points allowed, a pick 6 in that one. Week 10 at Houston, 23 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. And Week 11 versus the Jaguars, 6 points allowed, a sack and an interception. So this week, another good matchup at the Indianapolis Colts. And this is going to be a game where Detroit, I believe, goes in there. They're off to an early start, and they make Anthony Richardson in this offense one-dimensional, where they start teeing off. And that's been the game plan all season long, because we've seen them put up a lot of crooked numbers on the scoreboard for the most part, is Detroit. We saw Week 8, they put up 52 points. And then going back to Week 11, they put up 52 points once again. So this week in Indianapolis, I think they get off to a hot start, and their defense just starts teeing off early in this game. Next start, Pittsburgh Steelers, a Thursday night game at the Cleveland Browns. Browns give up the second most fantasy points to DSTs on the season, and this Steelers defense are the better units in the league, where we just saw them hold down a high-powered Raven offense to 16 points. So the last few weeks for this DST, Week 8 versus the Giants, 18 points allowed, 4 sacks and interception, fumble recovery, and a return touchdown. Week 10 at the Commanders, 27 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. In Week 11 versus Baltimore, 16 points allowed, 2 sacks, an interception, and 2 fumble recoveries. So we know Jameis Winston, he's a turnover machine. He's going to take some big hits. But also Jameis Winston, he does put points on the board, and he gets yards and the football down the field. But I believe this Steelers defense, they're going to cause some havoc on Thursday night. They're going to get a few sacks. They're going to turn the football over a few times. And I think they can hold this Cleveland Brown team to the mid-teens, low 20s in this one. So they're definitely a start. The next start, the Denver Broncos. So Denver, one of the best defenses in all pro football, in my opinion. And this week, a great matchup with the Vegas Raiders that give up the most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So Denver, the last few weeks, I know they had tough matchups in Week 9 and Week 10 at Baltimore, Kansas City. And then Week 11, they bounced back with a big performance. Week 9 at Baltimore, 41 points allowed, a sack in that one. Week 10 at Kansas City, 16 points allowed, 4 sacks. And Week 11 versus the Falcons, 6 points allowed, 4 sacks and an INT. So like I said, this Vegas Raider team, most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. Gardner Minshew, he's going to be taking big hits, I believe, in this game, turning the football over. And when you got a shutdown corner like Surtain, who I think Patrick Surtain is the best cornerback in all pro football, makes everything easier, and it gets that pass rush more opportunities to get to the quarterback. So with all those factors, and an indoor ball game as well, which always helps, I think Denver's defense goes out there, has another great performance. Next start, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a 1-week use only and a good streaming option. I like Tampa Bay with this matchup at the New York Giants. So Tampa Bay getting a little bit healthy. New York making the quarterback change, going to Tommy DeVito, who started last season for this New York Giant team at times when Daniel Jones was out with the ACL. In the last few weeks for Tampa Bay, they've made some plays, but obviously they're giving up a lot of points. Week 8 versus Atlanta, 31 points allowed, 2 sacks to safety. Week 9 at the Chiefs, 30 points allowed, 4 sacks, a fumble recovery. And Week 10 versus 9 is in that tough loss, 23 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. So like I said, Tommy DeVito in their quarterback. This Giant offense, their offensive line hasn't guarded well. And DeVito last season, he wasn't a total scrub, but he was turning the football over. He was taking sacks. And I think Tampa Bay, going into MetLife this week, coming off the bye and refreshed, could go out there and make some plays and put up some points. And the fifth and final defense, DST, I have as a start is the Minnesota Vikings. So Minnesota, one of the best units in all pro football. And this week, a good matchup with the Bears that give up the 7th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So Week 9 versus Indianapolis, 7 points allowed, 3 sacks and INT, fumble recovery. Week 10 at the Jaguars, 7 points allowed in that one, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery. And Week 11 at Tennessee, 13 points allowed, 5 sacks and an interception. So this defense playing great football. They're getting a lot of sacks on the quarterbacks, picking the football off. And this week in a good matchup versus obviously rookie quarterback Caleb Williams, who's taken a lot of sacks this season. He's turned the football over at times as well. I think Minnesota could go out there, have a good ball game, get to Caleb early and often. I know it's a ball game in Soldier Field, but the last 2 weeks they've been on the road versus poor offenses in Minnesota, and they're putting up points. So that's a few defense DST units I would start for Week 12 of the fantasy football season.